Okay, so here we are for the third round. Couple of fun facts. Charlie Jackson married Diana. What was your maiden name? Diana Aston in March of 1981. Who knows what other famous Charlie and Diana married in 1981? Just a few months before. They married in July, is that right? The other guys, yeah. I think they'd have done a better job of running England than, I think our Charlie and Di would have done better. Another fun fact about that, Diana just told me that they had a contest in Abilene, Texas, that somebody told them about after the wedding and after the honeymoon, where they could have had a first-class honeymoon paid for them if they'd won that contest, if they were getting married. If it was a Charles and Diana as well, any Charles and Diana could have had by a radio station in Abilene. So if you got good news to tell somebody, tell them before the deadline drops. You know, it's no fun to say, hey, you shoulda. No, tell them. Another thing, these the handouts that have been made reference to that a lot of people here have, if you're watching on YouTube, I have all the handouts. Just send me an email if you want to receive them. And also, obviously, this is being recorded on YouTube. So if you know anyone who says to you at any time, you know, this kid is about to drive me crazy, let them know about it. Father in heaven, in Jesus' name, I pray that you'll give us a great afternoon like you gave us a great evening and a great morning. We thank you for your wisdom, and we pray that that wisdom will continue to come forth and that we will hear it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I take it that was my cue. Is that me or you?
It's not me, mine's turned off.
Okay. Well, nice thing I've discovered about electronics, if you ignore them long enough, they shut up.
Yes.
There you go. Okay. Yeah. You know, it's amazing. They think that this runs you. No, it's a device. It's a convenience. It's supposed to be, but most folks don't consider it so. This morning we spoke about telling and teaching, and tonight or this afternoon we're going to discuss coaching and delegating, the last half of that series, of that sequence. I mentioned as we were wrapping up about training Juno, my Rottweiler. I've got a funny story. She was not trained to police standards. She was trained to obedience standards, which is enough when you're as big as she is. But we went to summer camp one afternoon with me and the dog, and Barry was already there. I went to visit him. And one of the activities at summer camp is the adults hide and the kids, 60, 70, 80, 7, 8, and 9-year-olds running all over camp, go find the adults. It's fun. It's hide and seek, you know. There's adults that hide in trees. There are adults that hide in cabins. Can't get in the kitchen, so that's out of bounds. But nothing says you can't get under the kitchen. And Barry had never been found, as far as I know, because he and buddies would climb under the mess hall, around the corner, into the dark, back up under the kitchen. Nobody's going to go looking for back, but a Rottweiler will. And so me and Juno, we crawled under the mess hall, and we got to the black opening where I know it goes back under the kitchen. I went, go get him, girl. And she walked, and I can hear Barry and buddies chuckling, and we're going to watch this. And who got who? Now, she didn't chew on anybody, but I think I got the upper hand in that one. So that's a story on Barry. But training dogs is a lot of fun. Training kids is a lot of fun. As long as we have end goals in sight, if we just do whatever's easiest in the moment, brothers and sisters, the first rule of plumbing is poop rolls downhill. We're smarter than that, okay? Don't just do what's easiest in the moment. Parenting is work. It does require that we take the next step, that we stay ahead of the 7-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 15-year-olds. And sometimes it's tough. I'm not even beginning to say that I stayed ahead of my kids all the time. But you got to keep trying. That's what we're there for. That's our job. During World War II, Chuck Yeager was one of our aces. He was the guy that flew the X-1 faster than the speed of sound first. But when he was flying over England, he was in a squadron, and there was one little Scotsman who had been there. He was an old man, this little Scotsman. He was 24. And he had survived the Battle of England, and he had survived many gunfights so far, or air fights so far. And someone thought they were being smart aleck, and they said, "Oh, Scotty, what do you do? What do you do if you come over the horizon and there's 30 Huns coming at you?" And he said, "You thank the good Lord, laddie, because that's what you're there for." Now that's deep, isn't it? And sometimes, brothers and sisters, when we are waist deep in the swamp and the alligators are getting after us, and you don't know what to do next with your kids, I'd like to suggest you start by thanking the good Lord, laddie, because that's what you're there for. It's our job to be a step ahead. There was a little boy, attention deficit. It's a classic diagnosis. Parents and children use it all the time. Give me meds. Give me meds. I've got ADHD. And so we, as a profession, give them stimulants, Strattera, Concerta, Adderall. Those are stimulants, first cousins to methamphetamines. And that does help them focus and help them get their schoolwork done. And then when they turn 18, we take all the drugs away and say, "Now you're an adult, deal with it." And the company I work for, in fact, has as a corporate policy, we will not prescribe stimulants to adults because they're so abused. And it makes sense to me, but what doesn't make sense is my profession does not spend any time, as far as I know, teaching children how to manage and how to cope with ADHD. We just say, "Oh, you're ADHD, let's give you pills," and then move on. I resent that. I think we're creating not a generation of, but we're abusing children. We're not doing what we're supposed to be doing by them. Now, I realize I'm saying things, and I'm saying things on YouTube, online, in the public, and I'm going to make some people angry. And I really don't care, because we are abusing children, giving them drugs. We have no idea what they are doing to those children's brains. And then when they do turn 18 and need to be productive members of society, we just cut them loose and let them float. Let me tell you about a little boy. He was a diagnosed attention deficit. I think, let me back up. Let me tell you about a professor I had in college. Part of being a therapist is sitting in front of a professor and discussing cases. We had a counseling caseload, and they don't trust to just turn us loose on the public without some supervision. So you would sit 4 or 5 students in a professor's office. We would discuss our cases. He would give us feedback. That's appropriate. It's a good way to learn. While we were doing this, my professor would be on the phone, arranging his own appointments, taking care of things, calling people. I don't know if he was paying his rent or not. I didn't listen to his phone calls. It wasn't my business. But he was on the phone taking care of stuff. And he was answering emails. Okay? One of my fellow students got upset. We're paying him $75 each per hour. So there's 4 of us. That's $300 to sit in his room and be ignored. I said, "He's not ignoring you. All you got to do is ask a question. He's listening to everything we're saying." And he was. He got it. Now, I'm not saying that he did, and I don't believe that anybody, by the way, can truly multitask at 100% efficiency in multiple things. Your brain's just not designed that way. But I believe that you can learn to utilize your own resources. If you are in his case, he knows he's an adult ADHD. I'm not going to say his name because it's in public, but he knows. It's not a surprise to him, and he had learned to manage it. Now, that's pretty cool, and more power to him. In fact, I really doubt that he could have sat and just listened to us and done supervision. We weren't that good and that intriguing a therapist, okay? So he had learned to manage it. I think we should be able to teach our children to manage their gifts. And we can say, "You're sick, you're broken, you're no good. I'm going to give you pills and make you all better." And I think we're doing them a disservice. We can say, "You're Superman, you can do things I can't do. Let me teach you to manage that." And it's frustrating because I can't keep up with him. I'll give you an example. I'm going back to this young man. I can type, and pretty good. I do that a lot in my profession. I can type and listen to a client talk to me and pretty well keep up. Now, I'll have to go back and clean it up. Sometimes I miss stuff, but I can keep up with a conversation typing. But I can't type and talk to save my life, because I will type what I'm saying, and it just doesn't work for me. I was talking to this young man one time, and I don't believe in just saying to a 12-year-old or an 11-year-old, sit down, let's talk therapy. I can do that with an adult. An 11-year-old, it doesn't work. So I let him do his homework while we're talking. Homework was his problem, by the way. When he got on, he would not complete his work, okay? No, this adds a different, I'll get to him in a minute. So this young man is sitting there, and he's writing his I remember he's writing his spelling words. And I remember, brothers and sisters, he was writing Knight in cursive. And as we were talking, I observed that the farther the conversation got from spelling, the better his handwriting. Now, I know what was going on. His subconscious was compensating for being distracted, and so he's being more careful. He's writing Knight, and his handwriting is getting better. And as we were talking and he was writing, he said, oh, Mr. Charlie, I got extra points last week on my spelling test. I said, well, what'd you do? He said, I could spell obstreperous. I'm impressed. I had to go look it up to see what it was, let alone spell it. I said, how do you spell obstreperous? His hand was writing Kni, and his lips were spelling Obstrep, and he finished spelling, and he didn't mix it up. He wrote night while his lips were spelling obstreperous. Now, if that's not Superman, I haven't met him. That's amazing to me. And the teacher was mad because he just couldn't do his schoolwork. She just didn't know how to train him. Now, I'm not knocking teachers. That's not my point. Some of these children, they are very difficult. We mentioned talking about, the 5 love languages and knowing how to react with or interact with your child, because which way really speaks to them best. If you have a class full of 30 children, how do you focus on just one? I acknowledge all of that. But not just the teachers, but most therapists don't know how to train them. A lot of therapists, they get to bill their hour because they sat down and played coloring books with their students for an hour. And I disagree with that. If we're going to have students in therapy, we need to teach them something. So this young man and I figured out, in fact, he said, I got in trouble yesterday. Oh, really? Yes. Teacher keeps telling me to mind my own business. Well, what happened? Susie lost her homework. Okay. Why is that your business? Well, I knew where it was. I said, where was it? She had left it over on the shelf next to the mailboxes. They use milk boxes as mailboxes to return work, and she had left it over there. He knew where it was because he didn't miss anything in class. You see the way the ADHD brain works? There's a little organ back here in the back, filters out the extraneous stuff. As you and I have been speaking, I don't know if you've noticed or not, most people wouldn't. There's a fan moving. Is that whirring? Is that what it is? Okay. And you can hear it, but none of us paying attention to it because this organ in the back filters it out. You don't need that information. Now, if we stop and focus on it, you can hear it. It'll probably bug you now for the rest of the hour because I've called attention to it. But in children that have ADHD, there's no filter. Everything that comes in, regardless of which sense of smell is hooked directly to the amygdala. That's the emotional center of the brain. So it does not go through this, but everything else does. Sight, hearing, touch, taste goes through this, and then it's sent out. And this is what decides, does it need to go out and be paid attention to? When that doesn't work very well, the bird sitting outside on the branch and the teacher talking and the little girl losing her homework all has equal importance, and he catches it all. We give a child a stimulant, this gets more active, filters out better, and they're able to pay attention in class. The problem is it's a chemical. So what we did with this young man, and by the way, he was correct. He tried to tell the teacher her homework is, I said, she just put, mind your own business, quit, hush, we'll take care of this, leave it alone. And he got in trouble because he wasn't minding his own business. But he couldn't not mind his own business. He knew it all. That's Superman. He had his spidey sense. Maybe he's Spider-Man instead of Superman. Anyway, so what we were able to do with him is got him a pair of little earphones, and they plugged into this the CD player that doesn't have a speaker on it. Yeah, I think they used to call them Walkman or something like that. Anyway, His parents were very conservative Christians, and they would allow him to listen to gospel music. So we put in a gospel CD, turned the volume where he could hear the music and the teacher, and put super glue on it so he couldn't drown her out. And she said he could listen to that in class. It didn't bother any other students, and he was able to get his work done. And we're teaching him how to manage it. So we can teach him, telling, teaching, coaching, delegating. So now we have, hopefully, I haven't checked back, it's been 10 years. I'd like to see what he's done as an adult. But we're trying to get them to where they can manage themselves as an adult. We don't have to manage them. Another young man, ADHD, acted up so often in class, 3rd grade, the teacher actually said, I don't like you, I can't wait till I can graduate you to the 4th grade. I think she should have been fired, but they don't do that, okay? But he was very disruptive in class. He had 5 worksheets a day to do. He did not complete them. He was spending his time disrupting class. And he would take them home, and he and Mom would fight until bedtime. When he got home, he sat down at the dinner table and started working on the day's worksheets. They stopped for dinner. When dinner was over, we went back to the worksheets. And he cried and fought with his mom all evening. Now, they were dancing, okay? And I think Mom got as much out of the dance in this case as he did. Because when I suggested that she change the routine, she didn't want to. Okay, I can't make folks change. Gave up trying to do that. But what would happen on Tuesday mornings at 10 o'clock, I'd go to class and I'd pick Junior up, and he and I would go to the library. The teacher would send all 5 worksheets with him because he's out of my hair. And we would sit down at the library table. We had the library to ourselves, the room to ourselves, and I would spread out 5 sheets and say, okay, Junior, what do you want to work on? You ever notice that a lot of kids are named Junior? Anyway, okay, Junior, what do you want to work on? And he'd pick one, math. Okay, and he starts doing his math. And he was doing age-appropriate work. He did, probably 80, 90%, and I wouldn't correct him. It's not my job to teach. It's my job to teach him how to manage himself. So he's doing his math, and he's doing it, and it's mostly legible, but he's 3rd grade. We're doing good. And he said, my mom went on vacation last week. Now, I could have argued with him, pay attention. You're supposed to finish your math. Finish your math, and you can tell me about it. Yada, yada, yada. I could do all this stuff. They've been trying that. It's not working. And I said, oh, really? Where'd your mom go? He said, she went on a cruise. She and several other ladies that go to church together. And he knew, because we had been practicing this for several weeks, that he could tell me about his mom going on vacation. He had less than a minute to do it, but he could tell me. And when he finished, I said, that is so interesting. Thank you for telling me that. Give me 2 push-ups. And he would get out and do 2 push-ups. Now, that wasn't punishment, okay? That's learning to work within your parameters. When he got up and got back in my class, in the chair, the math was gone and there was spelling. And he'd write 10 words, just write his spelling words 10 times. And he would write spelling words until he said, oh, look, a duck. And then he had about 30 seconds, tell me about a duck. Okay, that's a fascinating information about a duck. Now, give me a lap around the library. And he would, and I'd switch papers, and then he'd do whatever was next. In an hour, without a single tear being shed, without an argument, he would complete a day's work. Now, it's difficult to do that, I recognize, for a teacher with 30 students. But I offer that as a parent who don't have 30 children, it's our job to figure out how does our child learn, and then figure out how to help that child learn to manage that. There are children who will never be rocket scientists. That's just the way it is. I guess it's a good thing because then there'd be a glut on the market for rocket scientists. There are children who will never be president in spite of what moms say. Anybody can be president. No, they can't. Only one at a time, and usually less than 10 in a generation. So not everybody's going to be president. Can they accomplish stuff? Yes. But they won't accomplish anything if we don't figure out how to help them grow. Telling, teaching, coaching, delegating. Okay. I had another ADHD story, and I don't remember what it was. There was a teacher, one teacher particularly, I really liked working with her, when class started. And again, I'm not presenting this as information to teachers. I'm presenting it as information to parents, learning to teach your children how to manage their own behaviors. By the way, I have to write notes in my profession every day. If I have 6 or 7 or 8 clients, there's 6 or 7 or 8 notes I have to write. They usually take 15 or 20 minutes apiece because I try to be thorough. I mean, nothing against my clients at all, but I've done the work. That's the privilege part. Writing the notes is the boring work part. I get bored writing notes. I'm simply transcribing what I've already written by hand. I'm doing it twice. It's boring. You know what? I write a note. When I'm finished, I get to play a game of solitaire. And then I write another note, and I play a different game of solitaire. Because I'm learning, I can't just sit and write notes. So I teach children how to do the same thing. Manage it, don't let it run you, okay? And it doesn't take pills. Okay, so ADHD, there. And apply those things, like I said, not as teachers, because I'm not trying to do a teaching seminar, but we as parents are responsible for figuring out what works best for our children. I've talked to parents and heard them say, I can whip my kid till the cows come home, and it doesn't do any good at all. But if you take their electronic devices, you've got their attention. That's what I'm talking about. And I'm not suggesting you whip your kid till the cows come home. I'm suggesting that you find the way that works best, the consequence that works best for your children. And there are different kinds of consequences. They're labeled natural, logical, and arbitrary. A natural consequence is if I tell a child, don't touch the stove, it will burn you. Kids being kids, they say, what stove? And then they touch the stove, and what happens? It burns their fingers, okay? An arbitrary consequence, that's something that doesn't really have anything to do with natural, logical. Okay, let's do logical next. Is it up there, Diana? I didn't look over my shoulder. Okay, logical consequences. It's logically related to the behavior, but it's not necessarily as easy as you touch this, you get your fingers burned. That's a natural consequence. And I'm going to confess I struggle with trying to define this one. So a logical consequence is if you don't, cell phones. If you abuse the privilege of a cell phone and you run up the bill, a natural consequence would be, okay, Junior, how are we going to work out how you're going to pay this bill? You're going to mow the grass for you owe me, that's a natural consequence. A logical consequence doesn't necessarily have anything to do with a phone, but I told you I have trouble saying this. So a natural consequence is directly associated with the action. A logical consequence might not be directly associated, but is involved with. You lose the privilege of the phone until the next billing cycle. That would be a logical consequence. An arbitrary consequence is you ran your phone bill up, I'm going to whip you. Has nothing to do with. Now, believe it or not, there are times, and there are times for all three. The best one is a natural consequence. If you can work it out, if you can be ahead of the 10-year-old, and it's tough, but if you can work it out so that when they make a decision, okay, do you want to take the trash out today? Do you want to take out this morning or this afternoon? I don't like making decisions like that involve 24 hours because they don't remember that long. You want to take the trash out this morning or this afternoon? If you don't take the trash out, what's going to happen? Well, what do you mean? You're going to whip me? No, I don't want to whip you about taking the trash out. That's not a natural consequence. If you don't take the trash out today, either this morning or this afternoon, tell me, what do you think would be an appropriate response? Well, you can put it in bed with me. That's what you did before. That would be an arbitrary but effective consequence. When my children were 12 and 14 years old, we moved states, and I went to school. I went back to school because I knew then what college was for. It took me a little while to figure it out, and so I could be a therapist. I wanted to go back to school. Joshua was 12, and we had always helped. I mean, we're good parents. We want to make sure they do a good job with their schoolwork, and I would check, have you done your homework? Do you make time in the evening for you to do your homework? We always managed all of that. And he was 12, and I gave him 2 new opportunities to grow up when we moved. Son, you're 12 years old. You're going into the 7th grade. That's pretty cool. I think you can handle your own homework from now on. I don't mind helping you with homework. You can ask anything you want. But I'm not going to manage your homework anymore. You are. He said, okay, that's cool. Good. And I said, and you're going to set your own bedtime. It's not arbitrary anymore. I'm not going to set it. You take care of it. Now then, the privilege that comes with, that's the privilege. You set your bedtime. The responsibility is that you must get up and go to school on time. If you don't, this gets into consequences, okay? If you don't get up and go to school on time, you go to bed 15 minutes earlier the next night. or the night that you're late. You continue to be late, we continue to move the time frame up until we find one that evidently is good for you and you get all the sleep you need. See, that's a consequence that goes with not getting up on time. And so I figured, we're good to go. My son now will take care of his own homework and his own bedtime. We did get him an alarm clock, okay, it's appropriate. 12 is plenty old enough to get your own alarm clock. And I quit worrying about it. In fact, the first night, I was so unworried about it, I went to bed at 10 o'clock. That's when I normally do. Joshua didn't. The next morning, I got up, take a shower, get ready to go to class. I was going to class myself. Joshua was still awake. He was still playing video games. He had had a good time all night long, all by himself, doing what he wanted to do. Wow, son, I'm glad you were able to do that. I hope you did good luck in class. And he went off to school. He came back, and he was tired. I mean, this is now working on 48 hours up. He said, Dad, I'm beat. I need to go lay down. I'm sorry, son, here's a rake. We got to go rake leaves. We rake leaves till supper. And he ate supper. He took a shower. He caught his second wind. I don't know if you know what that is, but that means you can stay up late again. And he did. The second night, he went to bed at 4. I don't know that. That's what he told me. Because when he woke up at 6, he said, I'm tired. And I said, bet you are. Don't fall asleep in class. He went off to school. When he came back, Dad, I'm beat. I'm sure you are. Here's a rake. We got to rake leaves. We rake leaves till supper time. You know, we only had to do that twice. He ate supper. He went to bed. He was 12 years old. Brothers and sisters, he's now 37, and I haven't checked his bedtime since. Okay? He gets himself up, gets himself to school. If he stays up late, he has a consequence. He's tired the next day, but he gets up and goes to school. By the way, you and I stay up late sometimes too. It's adulthood. I'm not going to punish him for staying up late. There is a consequence. If he started missing school or started not getting up, then okay, I'll intervene. But as long as he manages the responsibility part, he can have the privilege part. Now then, I said there were 2 things that I did for my son when we moved to Searcy. The other one was, I'm not doing checking your homework. He never asked for help. He never brought anything to us. My son is exceptional when he does things. He does things very, very well. I give him credit for that. He goes 100%. So we got the 6-week reporting card, and he had zeros in every class. I've never done that in my life. He had nothing. So I called the school. I made an appointment with his homeroom teacher. And when I got there, there were 5 people. And I thought, oh, no, this is going to be horrible. And they said, I said, so why are all 5 of you here? Because there's 5 of his teachers. And they said, well, we've never seen an interested parent before. We want to see what he looks. Okay. I said, so what's the problem here? I mean, my son's got zeros. How do you do that? And they said, well, he's consistent. He doesn't disrupt in class. He's easy to get along with. He has good friends. He's a great kid. He hasn't turned anything in since school began. Not a test, not a homework sheet, not a daily worksheet. He really went all out. I'm proud of him for the effort there. It's hard to get 100% of anything. He had zeros. I said, goodness gracious. So I made up an intervention on the spot. I said, I tell you what, I'm going to get him an assignment notebook. And his job is to get you to initial this notebook every day. You must initial. All that I want you to do is initial it. It's his job to bring it to you. Do not chase him down. His job is to write down his assignments. I figured if he had them and he knows somebody's checking, he'd do them. I didn't worry about that part. And that's the way it worked out. And I said, now here's the deal. If you have a heart attack and die in class, the substitute better initial that book. Because there's going to be consequences if he doesn't get the initials. They said, what? I said, none of your business. Okay? I'm not going to have a class with a bunch of teachers. No offense about any teachers, but I'm not going to have a class and a conference about what I believe about spanking. So I got an assignment notebook. We put dates in it and all this stuff. I said, son, here you go. Your job is to write down your assignments and to have the teacher initial it every day. If you miss a day, you get 2 licks. Now that's an arbitrary consequence, has nothing to do with grades. That's just a fast, short-term, high-intensity consequence that I can administer, I not have to give a lecture for, and we're done. So, I told you my son is all in, okay? The first day, He came home and, oh, Dad, I'm sorry, I forgot my notebook. Bummer. So we went and got 2 licks. Well, we didn't. I administered, he received. I didn't lecture him, didn't bother, didn't need to. He knew why he got 2 licks. Okay, Tuesday he came home. Dad, I got my my notebook signed, and I left it at class. I'm sorry, let's go get 2 licks. So we did. And Wednesday he came in. Now the funny thing, as adults, we have talked about this, okay? My daughter is traumatized. She would ask Joshua on the way home, you got your assignment notebook? Nah, it's no big deal. Okay. Now, he's seeing how long Dad will dance. Okay. So Wednesday, he doesn't have his book or whatever, I've forgotten what the excuse was, and he got 2 licks. Thursday, he did have his book. He did not have 5 initials in it. I'm sorry, that's not the rules. You got 2 licks. Friday, he didn't have the book. He got 2 licks every day of the week. I mean, it was boggling my mind. So we start the next week. You know what? Monday, he got 2 licks. Now, I'm going to miss the sequence here because I only gave him licks 3 times the second week. Okay? He did improve. By the 3rd week, he's getting a handle on it. I don't remember if I gave him licks at all the 3rd week, and from then on, he didn't get licks. Okay? The rest of the semester we went on, all I did was check every day to see if the assignment notebook was initialed. It was his job to take care of the rest of the stuff. He brought everything up to at least a C. I'm proud of him. I am. I mean, it makes a good story now for seminars and things like that, but he figured it out that Dad was going to be consistent for my part. There is a consequence, and he knew how to fix it. Now, there's a real, let's see. The next reporting period, I said, son, I'm only going to check your assignment notebook 2 days a week, and you don't know which 2 it is. You still must get the initials. And I weaned myself off the process. I didn't want to do this for the rest of my life. I wanted him to grow up and to be an individual all by himself. Okay. And he did, and he passed, and all that's well and good, right? As an adult, when we talk about it, Angie talks about the trauma she experienced because she hated Joshua getting a spanking. We didn't do that often in my house. As much as I talk about it, I'm probably talking about, you probably know every instance that I've spanked my children. I mean, it just didn't happen very often. But when it did, it was to be remembered. So, fast forward, that was 7th grade. Graduated high school, no. His senior year of high school, he joined the National Guard between his junior and senior year. I'm sorry, I'm looking up here, I'm not ignoring you, but that's where my information's stored. So he joined the National Guard between his junior and senior year. He went off and did the boot camp thing. And he came back, oh, he was buff. I was proud of him. He had finished boot camp at 17. That says something. He goes through his school year, he takes care of things, comes very near the end of the senior year, and he came up and he said, Dad, I've got a problem. Now, brothers and sisters, this is the whole crux of what we've been talking about for Friday, Saturday morning, and today, okay? I want my children to know and understand. I like myself, I can think for myself, and there's no problem so big it can't be solved. So he says, Dad, I've got a problem. I said, okay, what is it? He said, well, I have to graduate, and I have to graduate on time because, and literally, the day before he graduated, the governor of Arkansas had to intervene. The principal of the school did not want Joshua to miss graduation. But boot camp says, or advanced infantry training said, you have to go 2 days early. And the governor fixed it. Anyway, he went to AIT. But he said, Dad, I've got a problem. I've got to graduate and because I've got AIT and they won't take me if I don't graduate. And that makes sense. I said, okay, so what's the problem? He said, I'm flunking 2 classes. Yeah, that sounds like a problem to me. Do you have a plan? Do you know what it would take to get the grades up? Now, it would have been very easy for me as Dad to say, okay, I'm going to ground you, and here's what you're going to do. And he said, well, let's say I can ask for extra credit, I can ask for tutoring, and I can make sure that I turn everything in that's required. Well, those 3 things will pass you. I said, okay, I'll make you a deal. Now, this is not punishment. You are not grounded. This is teaching discipline, okay? So, and that's the way I explained it to him. This is teaching discipline. I want you to take everything that you own that has a battery or electricity, is electrically operated, and put it out in my shop. When you bring me a note from your teachers that says you have at least a C average, you can have it back. Totally up to you. I don't care how long you leave it. It's just storage to me. Now, he was not grounded. I need you to understand. I needed him to understand. He was not in trouble. This is just a way to help. He asked for help. That's what dads do. So, you know, the funny thing is, 2 weeks later, he came back and said, here though, everybody says I got C's. He got his stuff back. Fast forward 4 more years, his senior year of college, he called me and said, Dad, I need to borrow your shop. I'm not making that up. Dad, I need to borrow your shop. Excuse me, for what? Well, the TV's in the way, and I got to get some studying done. I got to bunker down and get this stuff done. I said, okay. And he did. He put stuff in my shop. That's what we're trying to do. I'm proud of Joshua. I really am. I guess you can tell. But telling, teaching, coaching, delegating. We have to find, how do they learn? How do they react to, how do they feel loved? And we have to stay ahead of a 7-year-old, 10-year-old, 15-year-old. And it is tough. And as parents, as I've said before, as we were talking, it's about, if you need help as a parent, asking for it. That's tough to do. But you know what? If you are able to find another family in your church, and they've got kids that are grown that are like, I want my kids to turn out like that. They don't mind talking to you. And they won't assume that you're stupid, and they won't assume anything other than they want their kids to grow up as well. And we were blessed. In the congregation we attended, there were several families like that we could talk to, and that was pretty cool. Okay. Natural, logical, and arbitrary consequences. Give me a solution. Give a children an opportunity to fail in a safe environment, make a correction, and then it's an opportunity to succeed. You know, the funny thing is, to me, Joshua does not remember those spankings. Now, he doesn't doubt the stories, but when we sat together as a family, we were talking about them. Angie, now, 30 years later, it's awful. Whack, whack, She said, and I knew it was going to happen. Josh blew it off. He doesn't remember them. Never happened. I don't know. Anyway, more power to him, I guess. Yes, ma'am.
And it's like, how did that happen?
I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse. Really.
It's very fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's in every family. It's completely different.
Mm-hmm. And when God said, you're going to have kids, he was mad.
I don't know. It still blows my mind.
Well, I know. He wasn't mad when he said, go fill the garden. Okay, I remember that. But the second time he talked about it, he wasn't happy. Okay, yes, pain in childhood. Okay. Yes, we're doing good. Okay. If you don't mind stories, I hope you don't mind, because I think people remember stories better than me just lecturing and giving bullet points. When my children turned 16, I said, it's time to go to work. Okay? That was part of my teaching you how to be an adult. It's not an option, you will work. My daughter said, I don't want to work in fast food. I said, okay, I don't mind where you work. I tell you what, you arrange any interview you want, I'll make sure you get there. I'll be your ride. She didn't drive at the time. And she did. She wanted to work in a library or at a bookstore, something like that. Nobody hired her. She's 16. I said, now then you got, was it 2 weeks or 3, a reasonable time frame for the interviews. And if that doesn't work, we're going to start at one end of Main Street where all the fast food restaurants are, and we're going to work our way down until somebody says yes. And she said, okay, because she was confident. She knew she was going to get a job in a bookstore or a library. Okay. And she didn't. We started at McDonald's. McDonald's hired her, and she worked there for the next 3 years, which is fine. I think people need to work fast food. Makes them better customers later. Well, time tootled on, and she came in and said, Dad, she's 16. She said, there's a guy that works with us. He's in his 30s, and he's touching me inappropriately. She said, now it's nothing overt yet. He's just making me uncomfortable, and I don't like it. Okay, now I want you to remember something about my history. I grew up in a violent home. I was a cop for 10 years, and now I'm a dad of a pretty 16-year-old girl. I don't mind fixing this problem at all. And that's my first inclination. But I can't, because Angie needs to know how to deal with it. So we talked about it, and I said, you have a problem, what's your solution? She said, well, I need to tell him not to touch me. It's a good start. What then? She said, well, I tell him that, and then I need to, if he touches me again, need to go talk to management. I said, okay, can I make a suggestion? She said, yes. I said, tell him first, then tell management. Don't wait for a second. You don't need to give somebody 2 chances to do something like that. She said, okay. So she did that. She told him, don't touch me at all. I'm not fair game. And then she told the management, here's what I told him. I don't want to be touched. And a week, 2 weeks went by, and he grabbed her and pulled her down onto his lap. He was sitting in a chair, pulled her down into his lap. And she said, I hopped right up and said, come with me. She took him to the manager. He didn't finish the shift. I think that's appropriate. Now then, which one did Angie learn more from? Me going and taking care of the problem or fixing it herself? I think she learned more the second time. She needed to know that. But that was hard, because I don't mind violence. Joshua, when he turned 16, I said, it's time to go to work. He said, I don't work fast food. I said, I don't care where you work, but you're going to work. So he started working with a widow lady down the street, and she said, if you'll mow my yard all summer, you can have the lawnmower. Well, that's a pretty good deal. He came out ahead on that, and she got her yard mowed. And so he did that. I said, now that's not income. You want a phone, and I'm not buying your phone. Well, we did buy their phone. We gave them flip phones for Christmas and an hour and said, don't use it all at one time. If you want more minutes, buy them. Seems fair. That's what I have to pay for my minutes. So anyway, so we gave him the phones, and he wanted to work. And he had a lawnmower. I said, well, why don't you talk to local businesses, and you can get a contract, and you can work there, and you can make money, not just a lawnmower. He said, okay. And so I said, I tell you what, I'll loan you $100. It's a loan. You will pay me back with interest, and we'll buy you a weed eater and a gas can and a receipt book. He said, okay, and we did that. And so we went to a grocery store, and I said, now come in. Now here's a funny thing. Joshua has a selective memory. We went into the grocery store, and I said, sir, where's the manager? We talked to him. This is my son. He wants to start a business mowing grass, and he thinks he can mow your grass for, we'd already talked about X number of dollars a week, and he'll do it every other week. And it was much less than the commercial guys paid or charged, so he hired Joshua. Well, that's pretty cool. I don't want to do Joshua's business, however. So we went to the next one. I said, now then, you see what I said. You know how we did it. It's your turn. I'll be there, and I'll coach you. So we did. And the guy hired him, too. Man, where did I get hired like this? But he was pretty cheap. And he went to the third business. We went up there, and he had his lawnmower, and I went and said, you need to go ahead and do it in by yourself. You don't need me anymore. And he did. He got 5 businesses. That boy had more money in his pocket all summer long than I did. And all I had to do was get him there every Saturday morning, which was worth it. Telling, teaching, coaching, delegating. I don't want to be responsible for a 37-year-old living in my basement. Yes, Angie? Diana? What? Oh, well, Diana wants me to make sure and tell you that I wasn't paying their bills because I was in school and having trouble paying my own bills. That reason is really irrelevant because they're 16. When Josh graduated high school, I said, okay, you got 2 weeks and you start paying rent. He said, what? I said, well, yeah, it's fair. Get a job. You're in the Army. In fact, he was in the Guard. He was getting paid from the Guard. He said, well, how much is rent? I said, let's see, my mortgage is $780 a month. So rent will be $780 a month. He said, Dad, that's not fair. I can get an apartment cheaper than, oh. And he did fine. And I'm bragging on my kids, I recognize. And I hope you don't think that it's because I think I'm a perfect parent. I don't. But that's the way Diana and I dealt with telling, teaching, coaching, and delegating. Because we're not trying to raise children who are going to be 37-year-olds living in our basement. We're trying to raise adults who happen to be children right now. And we are obligated, okay? You might not have intended for those little boogers to be here. That happens sometimes. But once they're here, they're your job. And it's not always easy. Get help from friends, get help from loved ones, get help. Okay. Telling, teaching, coaching, delegating. There. I'm trying to make sure that I cover the things I need to cover. There. Are there questions while I'm stopped for a moment? No? That's the best way in the world to kill questions, you know, is to ask for them. Yeah. Okay. And it seems like I'm missing something, but I guess not. You have a problem, give me a solution. That's a big, big part. That's Sunday morning. Okay. Coaching. Consequences. We've covered that. Very good. How did I do that? Okay. Diana, are there any slides up there that I did not cover? Probably. Nope, that's Sunday. The ratio of loving time? Okay. For a relationship to be stable, needs at least 5 positive acts of affirmation a day. If you have to count them to make sure that you get them in, it's worth the trouble. 5 a day, that's a lot. It's work for me to do 5 a day with a woman I love, let alone some sweaty teenage boy that sometimes I wonder. Okay? But it takes 5 a day. It takes 7 a day to grow. That can be something as simple as a pat on the back. You don't even have to say anything. It can be, thank you very much for taking the trash out. Well, it's his job to take the trash, and why should I have to thank? Because that's a positive affirmation. If you want behaviors to repeat, we only repeat behaviors that pay off. And if you want your son to take the trash out consistently, make sure that it pays off. Thank you for taking out the trash. And a thank you goes a long, long way. I don't know that we don't do that enough. It's such a simple thing. Yes. Very good. Okay, 5 positive affirmations, and that refers back to the 5 love languages: time, touch, talk, gifts, and acts of service. And which one is your child's? And it's hard to know. They're not going to be able to tell you. You know, it's funny how often sitting in my office, I'll have a husband and a wife sitting there, and we'll talk about 5 love languages. It's a model. There's lots of models. This is one as good as another. And I'll ask the husband, so what really makes your wife feel loved? What really fills up her cup? Make sure that there's no room in there for anybody else. And he doesn't know. Usually he says sex. Usually that's not it. And then I ask the wife, what's your husband's love language? What really fills his cup up, makes him feel loved and special, and makes, just he knows that you're the one, he's in love with you, and fills his cup up? She usually says, yeah, sex. It's usually not it. And children know even less how to tell you. But if you can observe, what does the child do for you? Do they come up and hug you often? Hug them back. Do they bring you flowers? Not necessarily, but it might be it may be doing gifts, Mommy, look at these little wilted flowers I've carried around in my fist all afternoon. Yes, dandelions even. We have to watch, and we have to be willing to observe. What are they doing? What's my child doing? Do they sometimes just like to come sit on the sofa next to me and cuddle while I'm reading a book and they read one of their books? Daddy, Daddy, look at this picture. Spending time together is very, very important. And if we observe, if an old man sitting in an office can watch a family for an hour and figure out what a child's love language is, I would think that a parent sitting at home should be able to do the same thing, because they got a lot more time to do so. But if you got to be looking for it. The little child's not going to come up and say, oh, my way of saying I love you is time, and I need you to spend time with me. Children don't think that way. They just get lonely and they want to come sit next to you, or be underfoot. Oh, man. How many dads have tried to complete a home project and they have children? It takes extra if they're going to help. Yeah, just schedule it in because you ain't getting it done today. You know, though, I do miss Joshua when he left. I've got nobody else to blame my misplaced tools on. So there's advantages. Okay, I'm starting to ramble and I don't want to ramble. Are there any questions, comments, observations? Yes, sir?
Well, I'm trying, as I'm thinking about somebody I know that adopted a 15-year-old girl with, not opposition defiance, the other one. From Romania.
Reactive attachment disorder.
Reactive attachment disorder, yeah. And she's now 19, and they're launching her. She's working. She's moved into one apartment, lost it, about to move into another apartment. And I guess they're doing a lot of the things that you talked about. I'm just wondering if you have anything else I could say to them to encourage them. I'm gonna have them watch this whole weekend. They don't live here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna have them watch this whole weekend. Just that's on my mind all weekend. Watching them hurting over all this.
And you're starting behind the curve, obviously, for several.
Really damaged when she came into the life.
Okay. You're starting behind the curve, obviously. Starting with a 15-year-old is a real challenge, right? I don't know, and the 15-year-old would agree with me, a 19-year-old now. I'm not going to get them to change their worldview in a few months or even a couple of years. The brain is a fantastic organ. I mentioned earlier 250,000 neural connections when they're infants, 250,000 neural connections a minute. That's 1 million every 4 minutes. That's 15 million an hour. And that's the way her brain has come together. This, however it's connected, and that's not going to change in a heartbeat. Now, the good news is, at 19, her brain is not settled in yet either. Because you have all these connections as a child up to age 2 or so, and while it's still developing. Age 2 to 10, your brain's being used, and it's learning, and it's getting a handle on things. Starting at 10 or 12 years old, it starts pruning. It starts shaping. It starts designing who it's going to be as an adult. There are neural connections, for instance, in every toddler to speak any language on the planet. The connections are there. There are sounds that a Spanish speaker can make. A rolling R, the tilde R. I'm 62 years old and I can't do it yet. You know, when they say Robert, okay, that's available. But because I didn't learn to use it as a toddler, it dissolved. That connection's gone. The ability to make that rolling R. Now I can learn it with lots of practice, but I will probably, if I learned Spanish, I would always have an accent because the brain is adapted to that. So that it adapts and gets it, and then at about 10 or 12, it starts pruning and changing. So a teenager, they have to figure out the best way to do things. That's part of what this pruning and training and growing process is. And it's biological. It's not just emotional. There's things changing. I tell everybody teenagers' brains are oatmeal. It's not very far off. If I handed a teenager a revolver, I'm going to open it up, I'm going to put one live round in there, I'm going to spin it and close the chamber. And if I say, I'll give you $5,000 if you put that to your temple and pull the trigger, the teenager will take the revolver and think about it. Let's see, there's 5 chances in 6, pretty good odds, that I'm fixing to walk away from this experience with $5,000 in my pocket. And if I happen to hit the wrong cylinder, then I won't know it. And so that's not too bad, but then I won't be able to go to the prom next Saturday, and I'll have to work all the way through it. There's a hierarchy of decisions to be made. If they're driving a car and they come up to a stop sign, there's a hierarchy of decisions. Okay, I'm at a stop sign. The car stopped. This is good. Anybody come from that direction? Nope. Oh, there's a big old truck coming from that direction. Can I beat it? Well, if I mash real hard on the accelerator, I got to move my foot off the brake, mash real hard, I might be able to rabbit jump out in front. And by the time they make the decision and hit the accelerator, the truck's got them. Because they've had to go through the whole hierarchy. That's just that's organic. That's biology. The funny thing is, at about 25 years old, your brain has come to some conclusions. The decisions that you make all the time, it's actually made more efficient by putting a thin, waxy sheath, it's called Malian sheath, around that particular connection, and it's a little bit faster than it would have been before. Come up to a stop sign, look to the left, no. That's just biology. By about the time you're 25. That's why your auto insurance rates drop at 25. The insurance companies figured it out before we did. Okay? Now then, all this to apply towards your 19-year-old, good news is her brain's still plastic. It's not set in stone. That's why a teenage alcoholic, if they can reach the point where they go, yeah, that was horrible. I don't think I want to do that anymore. They can put it down. They can. But if they continue drinking past that magic number of 24, 25 years old, it'll be a struggle for the rest of their life. So the more decisions we can help them make the right way early, the better they are. Pardon? Oh, okay. You inhaled deeply. I thought you were fixing to say something. Now, back to what do we do with a reactive attachment child? What if I have a teenager, or I am a teenager? Let's do that. I'm a teenager. And I'm given an opportunity to, right now I'm 16, and my parents say, how would you like to be treated like you're 17? I'm not stupid, yes. I don't know what's involved yet, but yeah, I want to be treated older than I am. And I do this in my office very frequently. I have parents and a child is misbehaving, and I say, I'm going to go to bat for you. I need to look at you instead of an empty chair. Okay? I'm going to go to bat for you. I'm on your side. Okay? You're 16. I want your parents to treat you as if you're 17. Okay? That's good. What privileges do you think go with being 17 that you don't have now?
I can be out until I want to not be out.
Okay. Now, my first question. Now, I'm with you. I am. Okay. In fact, I've had that very thing said in my office. So, is there a curfew, a legal city curfew? In Paragould, there is for teenagers.
Is there a curfew in Manchester? I don't know. Let's just say there is not.
Okay, there is not. Okay. Now then, that we just want to be courteous. Okay, now that's reasonable, right? What's a good time for you to say, I'm willing to be in just so my parents don't worry about me?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock. Okay, I'm in. I'm going to go to bat for you. By the way, that's a privilege, being out till 1 o'clock, right? Now, I could try and negotiate, but at this point, I'm not going to. We're going to accept 1 o'clock. Because the truth is, now, by the way, you said 1 o'clock, okay? 1:01 is late. Okay? Now, no, it's okay. I'm going to go back for you. I'm good for 1 o'clock. But when you're an adult and you get a job and you keep consistently punch in at 8:01 and they want you to be there at 8, somebody's going to talk to you, and they'll let you go. So all I'm trying to do is teach you an adult skill. I'm going to go for 1 o'clock. And there you go. But if you're late, things change. All right? So mom and dad, he wants to be, I was going to ask you, that's a privilege. What are the responsibilities that go with that?
Not to wake them up when I come in.
I told my son when he came back from the Army, if you come into the house, you're an adult now, okay? You come into the house, you better make some noise, because if you're sneaking around, you might not wake up in the morning. I don't like intruders.
Let them know,
Okay?
Let them know.
Turn on the light. Let me know you're here. Okay? But that's just being reasonable, right? I mean, we don't want to shoot our son accidentally. So, okay. So, did you let them know what? Now, what about consequences for tomorrow? I mean, can you sleep as late as you want? Can you?
No, not. I've got 19. I've got a job, so I've got to be there.
Okay. So as long as you're consistent at work, getting at work, now then we're not even getting into yet, by the way. 19, you're living here. There's responsibilities than just keeping the home up. I assume by this point you're doing your own laundry. You can cook occasionally and clean up your kitchen after yourself. And they shouldn't be able to smell your room when they pass it. Right? Okay. So mom, dad, he thinks 1 o'clock. And I'm thinking that's a good idea, right? Now, if he misses curfew, and it's your time now, you tell me, if he starts missing curfew, what happens? Well, Lock the door. You miss curfew, you're just toast. Okay? That's a possibility. But you see what I'm doing? I'm trying to engage the 19-year-old in what's happening to them and what's happening next. There's not a 19-year-old on the planet who doesn't think they're already grown. But they don't know yet that being grown involves dealing with the people around you, and that every action you do has consequences in dealing with the people around you. Most 19-year-olds don't realize that yet. Most 30-year-olds don't realize that yet. Okay, but that's what we're trying to teach them. I'm going to go to bat for you. I appreciate, 1 o'clock, I think you suffer from sleep deprivation, which we'll talk about later. But right now, Mom, Dad, does 1 o'clock sound good for you? If he's late, he's late. Bummer. Now, and now this is a side. This is Dad. This is Charlie, the dad, talking. You do realize, of course, that there is nothing good that happens outdoors after 10 o'clock. Yes. Same point. There isn't anything good that happens out there. I was a cop for 10 years. My shift started at 11, and I know for a fact nothing good happens after 10. But point made, okay? But we'll deal with that. The idea, though, I'm trying to present is, how do I engage you in raising you? That's part of delegating. And we can do it with bedtime. We can do it with the chores. We can do it with paying for your own phone. I'm all for a kid having a phone. I'm not all for, and you'd be amazed how many parents come to me and say, my kid ran up a $700 phone bill. Bummer. All it is.
I know quite a few parents who their kids are in their late 30s, full-time job. Okay, parents go to the phone.
Yes.
I am like, are you kidding me? In my own fear, and I'm like, in friends.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, let's keep giving them.
Have you ever seen the movie Remember the Titans? The Titans, it's a high school football team. And it's about integrating the black and the white community in the late 60s, I think, early 70s. 71, okay? And there was a point in there where the coach makes a good point. He reprimands a student, and the other coach goes over and rescues him, brings him back on the team. And the black coach said, you're crippling him, because he needed to be reprimanded, not rescued. And tomorrow morning, as we're talking, the sermon, that's part of what we're talking about is, okay, you're crippling them. Every time you say, it's cold outside, go put on your coat, you're saying, I don't think you're smart enough to figure out if you're cold or not. Think for yourself, go put on your coat. And you're crippling them. We have to let, Joshua said, I like to froze my fanny off. Boy, bummer. I mean, what do you say? You choose poorly, you suffer a consequence. I'm 62 years old, and when I choose poorly, and by the way, I still do occasionally, I'm not going to brag about them, when I choose poorly, I suffer the consequence. So, I don't know why a child shouldn't. It's not cruel. I'm not trying to be what's the word I usually use to describe the Greek Roman gods? Capricious? I think that's the right word. I don't play with children's lives just to get my jollies, to make me feel good. If I'm doing that, I'm sick to begin with. And I don't need a child to make me feel complete and whole. If I'm doing that, I'm sick to begin with. And we need to be talking to a therapist or somebody who can help me grow up and be a mature person myself. What I'm trying to do is interact with a child in such a way that they can reach the point that they don't need me anymore. And that's a wonderful thing, not a bad thing. And many, many women sit in my office. I gave my life to my children. I went to every football game. I was in the band support group, and I did the what do you call it? Refreshments at the football game. Everything. I lived for my son. And then he found a girlfriend. Well, I'm glad for him. The one particular one I'm quoting, he went off to another state. Had to. It's the only way you get out from under his mother's wings. And she resents it. Well, I understand why she resents it, but that's not a mother's love. There are. But that's about the parent, not about the child.
Well, that goes back to the relationship of the wife and the spouse.
Yes, ma'am.
It's
It's a big picture.
okay. That's, you're right.
Yeah, it's about anyway. There's a lot. There's a systems tend to repeat themselves if we're not careful. Generation stuff, Deuteronomy chapter 6, things. If you do this right and you get this right, it'll go to your children and your children's children, and it can in a good way, and it can in a bad way. And I like the verse for that reason. But I am also aware, okay, that if I really don't like the way it's going, the next generation doesn't have to be the same. Joshua and Angie, I'm not bragging, it's just they've never met Oscar, my biological father. And that was intentional because I don't want them exposed to that. You don't have to repeat the behaviors. You don't have to repeat the patterns. I'm not magic. I'm not mystical. I'm not awesome or wonderful or anything. I don't want my kids to experience that. And we can change those things. We can decide that we want a good generation to follow us. And I think if you can decide it and use some of the principles we've talked about today, that I'm telling, teaching, coaching, delegating, I'm trying to raise an adult who's not 37 years old and living in my basement. All the things I keep repeating. If we apply those things, I love you, I trust you. You can make decisions and you can suffer the consequences or enjoy the benefits. By the way, all consequences are not bad. I hope I have not left that impression. Make a good choice, even if it's different from mine. You can live with it. Joshua drove a truck home one time. It was mostly a truck. If he put his feet down through the holes in the floorboards, he could use his soles of his shoes as brakes because there were big holes in the floorboard. It was loud. I climbed underneath it and looked. It didn't have a muffler. It had a fence post welded to the exhaust manifold. Listen to that power, Dad. Yeah. We raised the hood, and there were extension cords being used for spark plug wires. Yeah. It was Arkansas, yeah. He said, look here. I said, son, really? Okay, I'm glad for you. You're old enough to make your own choices and buy your own truck. Be aware this truck is going to teach you a lot. Okay? And the second is, you may not come home after dark. That's out of deference to the neighbors. It makes too much noise. Okay? Now that's just being nice to the neighbors. It's not because I'm cruel and capricious, but you may not drive this in the neighborhood after dark. It's too loud. He said, okay. It stranded him all over town. He eventually sold it in situ, which means where it was sitting, because he couldn't even get it home. He learned a lot from that truck. And I'm not telling the story about where I learned a lot about don't buy a vehicle from a guy that's in jail. We all learn our stories. Okay. See, so it's not all Joshua. I'm just honest. Yes, Diana? That's tomorrow. Yeah, there is a time to rescue children, okay? And I'm not denying that. But I am, what she's reminding me is, for those who cannot hear, that we need to be aware of that. That's part of what parenting is. But that's tomorrow. I haven't forgotten it. Okay. God bless you. Thank you for your attention. I don't know if there's a time limit on what we do, or do we have to go to 4 hours or whatever. Okay. So let's close with a prayer, and then we'll be dismissed. Father in heaven, as you so well know, being the perfect Father, being a parent's a pain in the neck. And I know you love us. I know you put up with us. I know you tolerate us. And I know that before we were even created, you had made a plan to buy us back. You love us that much, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that you gave us the Bible and so many lessons and so many things to learn through there about raising our kids. And I'm grateful for our kids, because they in part teach us what it's like to be in a relationship and to be disappointed and to love the little buggers anyway. I thank you for that. Please give us wisdom. Help us to be patient. Help us always to be kind. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you for your attention. And by the way, don't ever buy a car.
I think if you have a picture of your kids, I'd love to see a picture of that.